Hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome into Smite 2 Long Didn't Watch, your one-stop shop for all things Smite 2 Founders Series that's been going on. My name is Gormizer. This side of me, that's Chili. That side of me, that's J-Mac. I already said my name. There's no floating head in the back because it turns out we only have the two regions this time because everybody else did their playoffs. They've, come to a wrap, come to their conclusion as we learned last week. Meanwhile, the playoffs are still going on right now for EMEA and North America, where we will be sending 3 teams from each region forward at the end of Sunday, actually, as it turns out. That's real soon. And then, there'll be like a little break for a couple weeks. And then I believe December 12th is that Thursday. We'll be kicking off the whole land. It'll go over towards J-Mac's birthday.
Yeah, at the end of it all.
At the very end of it all. And then Vegas.
And then
it's all so real. It's all like right there.
Yeah, and what more could you want?
What else? And then
I was gonna alley-oop you into something, but it's done now. I can't.
But yeah, and then it's Vegas.
It's a Trelly diff.
Wow,
I should have spoken.
he Trelly dipped himself.
I'm so sorry.
So what happened this week? We had the first week. So playoffs is split into 2 weeks. This side, Trelly side, 14-team double elim.
Yep.
This side, J-Mac side, 16-team double elim. Both only sending 3 teams forward. That's a total of 6. And we'll go to Trelly first. What happened in your brackets?
Well, we had some action. We had some upsets. We had some teams that we all expected.
He's got it all, this guy.
I mean, it's not me that had it. I'm telling you what happened.
They had it all, those guys.
They had it all. I'm just here to recap it for you. As you can see, our semifinals, we got Team Risk versus Squirps. To get to that point, you can see Team Risk versus Smoke Break, Squirps versus Yodi Gang. Other side, Bill's Goons versus Mockingbird, ? Bill's Goons 2-1 Giovanni Giorgio. And Mockingbird takes on DDK. That, of course, is the upset that we will talk about later. But as you can see down to the lower end of the bracket, we said goodbye to Old and New. We said goodbye to Project Win, Tythonic, Mega Plumbers, Threat Level Midnight, and DDK. Everyone else, they still have the option. Our teams in the semifinals have an extra life, and you're in the losers round. You got to win if you want to make it to Vegas, which puts a lot of pressure on teams like Titans Reloaded, Giovanni Giorgio, Yodi Gang, and Smoke Break, which, of course, we will touch on a little bit more later as well. But regardless, action-packed weekend, and, the highlights were aplenty. I saw a ton of clips floating throughout just Twitter and Twitch alike because there's just a ton of action. So let's start off with the Mega Plumbers, who I thought were a team definitely to watch out for. I already mentioned we said goodbye to them, but, they had some talent for sure. We thought they'd be able to put up a decent fight against some of these squads, but unfortunately they just could not hang. They looked disgruntled, maybe could be the word. I think just a little bit not on the same page. Mm-hmm. They went for I think they were down 1-0 at this point, and they went for a 5-man grouping in before the minions spawned in, which sometimes works out. If you have a good team comp. Yeah. That can set up for that sort of thing. They had Baron's Brew, which is a great when your team is only bringing one ability to the level 5 or the level 1 fight, and then everyone else has Baron's Brew, it can work out. It just didn't. It just seemed like they weren't locked in on this play at all, and they committed to it. And then after that, it kind of just snowballed out of control for a 2-0 in favor of Bill's Goons, which, Bill's Goons are a team that definitely we knew could put up a fight. But I don't know how much we expected it. So here you can see Kalas elects to level taunt on Athena, which is great for a situation like this. If you have 5 Baron's Brews ready to go, and I believe he gets a 3-man taunt, but look at his team. Watch the follow-up.
Yeah, they're all not there.
They're not there. Right. He walks up. He dies.
But dead. It's first blood. Nobody else followed up the Athena.
And then they leave.
And now Bill's Goons.
That's how they decide to start.
And suddenly the Mega Plumber's feeling real good about the start to this game.
It truthfully looks to me like they just squadded up together and they were like, let's do this. And then they were like, nah, we're not doing this.
Yeah. When we said this, we meant not that. Yeah. We didn't want to fight.
Yeah, which unfortunately, again, just did not really work out for them in the end. DDK was another team that we have been keeping our eyes on. I thought was going to be quite the threat in the lower end bracket once they were able to qualify here. How well were they able to do? That was the question. Unfortunately, as we just saw on the bracket, they did lose 2-1 to Tythonic and get knocked out. But if you did watch This Week in Smite 2, you may have already seen this clip, but I had to bring it up because D Drake has been a pleasure to watch for plays like
Drake
this.
gets caught. Oh, everyone gets blocked. Oh, Drake! How about that? Hercules has come to the dance, and he is.
And they were obviously losing at that moment, but still a beautiful play to try and make a comeback there. Drake has just been a pleasure to watch, honestly. A jungler that has been able to be super impactful on different style meta picks, also plays the meta super well. Unfortunate to see them go, but you know what? Still a great clip to go out on for DDK. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. There is no elephant in the room.
Oh.
It's a figure of speech. Bill's Goons were able to upset over Giovanni Giorgio. Now, there was already a clip, of course, that was the ending, like the Titan dying, but I wanted to go back a little bit further and just dissect why it went so wrong, because sure, it was 1-1, but this game was overwhelming in favor of Giovanni Giorgio, and then they just go for a little bit of an overstay at the Titan, and it was kind of a snowball effect.
Right now.
At this point, Nika is 8-0. Klino gets a great play to the back line, but you can see the Titan's getting kind of low. No Phoenix on left, no Phoenix in middle. Nika takes a lot of damage, does get the pick, dies. And then GG's like, okay, we've lost our Sobek, that's an absolute menace. Let's go in. And that's the question mark right here. See, it's 3v4. The Titan's looking relatively low, though, but adapting in Dardes and Kha'Zix, they decide to go for the end, but Kha'Zix is by himself here. He just walks in, charges the ult. Adapting's watching this play happen. Dardes walks up, does no damage, and Adapting tries to run. And you guys have probably already seen the clip. I'll summarize it for you. They run slowly towards the Titan. They have to go through left side Phoenix. Coast gets a pick, and then they end up overstaying and dying. So that was the upset there. The question this now brings up is GG, are they in trouble? They're in the losers bracket. Are they done? Was this like a complete overstep? I don't think so. I think they were definitely a little bit disjointed there. No reason to go in for the end call 3v4 personally. I think you can just easily say, okay, we'll back up. The Titan's at 1 HP. We group as 5 and then just redo it, especially with so much on the line. Like the Founders Series in Vegas, $300,000 prize pool, like a lot you would think that they would just like lock in slowly. But they had an extra life. So now they're in the losers bracket. I do not think they're going to make a mistake like that again, but I'd be pretty confident if I was going up against them after a play like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, maybe we can try and knock them down. Maybe they're not, playing to the best of their strengths like we know. So, definitely something to continue to look out for. The outlier in this region, of course, has been Team Risk. They have continued to look untouchable.
Guys are crazy.
They have continued to look untouchable, so much so that when I was casting this game, I was like, let's talk about like their matchup versus Cowabunga. Let's talk about.
Let's look to the future already.
Let's look to the future because clearly no one here has been able to knock them down. There's another team like that over in NA. We could bring the NA-EU or EMEA rivalry up again, things like that, because so far Team Risk has just looked unstoppable. They make very little mistakes. This is one of the mistakes. This is one of the mistakes they made.
Executioner online
didn't end up mattering,
pretty much all you need.
but it still is kind of funny how they're untouchable and they're up 17-2, but they still can't confirm a darn fire giant.
Here in time, looks like he might be able to throw one axe if he's lucky. Can he steal it away?
I think he
Yeah,
did.
He did get it.
Smoke break, steal away the fire giant. Is it enough?
And then Johnny just sends him on a wild goose chase. Again, 2-17 and a swift 2-0 for Team Risk, but you still got to be able to confirm those objectives, man. We can real quick dive into the playoffs here. So we have Bills Goons versus Mockingbird on one side, and then we have Team Risk versus Squirps on the other. So we are going to have two teams going to finals from there. If you want to know my predictions, which I'm sure you do, that's why you're here. I've got Mockingbird barely taking Bills Goons, but it could be closer now that Bills Goons has that extra level of confidence after upsetting Giovanni. And then I think Team Risk just takes Squirps, no problem. I want to give them a fighting chance, I do, but no one has been able to upset Team Risk. And the only misplays that they make is like, it's not them getting outplayed, it's them outplaying themselves usually. Like things that could have been solved. If you haven't watched or if you aren't familiar with these teams, we have the rosters available for you. You can take a look at our matchups there. Team Risk, Squirps. We got Variety, Lasbra, Theeks, Genetics, and Streak. Obviously the fan favorites, the #1 seed, and just ridiculous squad out of EMEA. Of course, up against the Squirps, Kana, Rapio, Gunter, Preds, and Davey. A force to be reckoned with, no doubt.
What's wild is I think I would root for Scorps and pretty much in a lot of matchups. I would at least be like, you know what? That at worst this is going to be like close.
Yeah.
I can't hear.
No.
I think it is a really good team. And I think, like you said, like because they're still up in the top, right? So like they still have a little bit of wiggle room.
Right.
For them,
Yeah. Our winners
they're
bracket.
Gonna need it.
Our winners bracket are the two top matchups: Bills Goons also versus Mockingbird, and that's the one that I'm giving a little bit more favor towards Mockingbird. But I think Bills Goons, if they're riding the confidence that they just got from upsetting GG, they could definitely take it to them. And I think those two, that's going to be a much better matchup. That top right, at least on paper. Squirps have been playing for a while. They are a skilled team, no doubt, and they could put up a fight. But yeah, if you had to watch one, Bills Goons versus Mockingbird, make sure to deliver. Now again, there's two teams, two stacked rosters that have fallen down to the losers bracket. All of these rosters have talent, but GG and Smokebreak are down in the do or die situation. They're up against Titans Reloaded with Listemics, Dark, ACD, Baki, and Ragna. And then, of course, Yodi Gang, Seagull, the French Emperor, Renegon, Ollie, and Merca. Banger matchups throughout. I do think that GG might be like a little wishy-washy, but they're the kind of guys that can lock in. They've got world championship rings. They know how to play under pressure. I do not think the threat of getting knocked out of this tournament is going to get to them too much. So hopefully that's the GG that we see show up this weekend.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. It is actually surprising because there are a lot of teams, and I guess this is just reality sinking in for me more than anything. There's a lot of teams that I'm like, oh yeah, we'll see them like at LAN. And I'm realizing that number is if I'm hitting 5-6 teams that I'm like, oh, we'll see them at LAN. It's like, no, you actually won't. Half of them you will not be able to see. So those matches, very, very important, very heavy. Like you said, you're given some edges over to specifically Team Risk more than
Team Risk, and then I think Mockingbird, but Bills Goons could definitely. That's the close one.
That's the.
I'm hoping Bills Goons just take that confidence from beating GG and just roll up like, what up? Like mocking who? But there's still you still have to be able to lock in and not just win off of a botched Titan defense, right? Because that was the case in this one.
You need a day of.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see day of. Reminder for EMEA. Because this went out on Twitter today, I think, 9 a.m. for Eastern. For them, that's like 1 p.m., something like that, somewhere in there. I don't know math. I don't know time zones. So, Google it. But 9 a.m. Eastern.
2 hours earlier than our normal starting broadcast time for esports.
Take whatever time that you've normally been ready in general, go 2 hours earlier. We'll be there. That's EMEA.
He's doing math. Give him a
Yeah,
second.
hold on. This is process.
7 hours and 25 minutes ago is when we would have started tomorrow. You're welcome. Got you. You're welcome.
This guy, man.
Hey, J-Mac, North America's happening.
Yeah, North America happened and will continue to happen. So as mentioned earlier, it was a 16-team double elimination bracket.
It's a lot of teams.
As of
A lot of
one, half those teams are now gone. It is now down to only 8 teams with those ones. We can take a look at the bracket in case you guys didn't get a chance to tune in to see what's still going on. Your top 4 teams still remaining in the winner's bracket, which means they have that second chance if they lose out. Cowabunga and Food Drive for Globe, team name but with 5 M's, and Scrumptious.
Those
Your
are
top
2
4.
awesome
So
matches.
really good semifinal matches, and I'm hoping, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be watching both of those matches. Down in the losers bracket, Borscht, Name in Progress, Kitty Party, and Mr. Play-by-Play, all of them on their last lives. Lose there, and you're out. Your playoff chances end. Your opportunity to come to the in-studio land gone. Your Vegas dreams shot down, unfortunately, if you lose out there. So hopefully, if you're in the loser bracket, you can still keep going. But as for the teams in the top bracket, I think these are probably all the teams that we expected when you look at these top teams.
Yeah.
Cowabunga has pretty much been the definitive #1 team that we've been talking about in North America. Scrumptious was kind of that #2 for a little while, and then Food Drive for Globe popped up. Team name with 5 M's has always been the conversation of a top team as well. I think the only one that surprises being in the lower bracket, and that's just by nature of there's too many dang good teams in North America, is that Borscht is now in the losers bracket after their loss against Scrumptious, although that was a really good matchup between those two as well. We got to catch the multi-part of that with a 2-1 to Scrumptious. And we'll actually get to talk a little bit about that matchup in a moment. The one that I kind of want to lock into first was Name and Progress versus Secret Service, because these were two teams that were like Secret Service. I believe they were a round 4 for Swiss, meaning they made it in on a 3-1 to qualify at the playoffs.
Yeah.
And for Name and Progress, they were a round 5. They had to go the full distance before they could actually qualify in. So technically, Secret Service coming in this was the higher seeded team, but they didn't really play like they were the higher seeded team in this instance. Name and Progress, and in particular, there was one specific matchup and one game in particular with their Sobek support mid laner ST. This guy's crazy. I don't know if I'm ever giving this person support solo Sobek again, whatever. I'm losing my words. I'm never giving him Sobek again because this guy is an animal and an absolute madman. Look how low of HP this Sobek is in the middle of two fairly healthy people. You've used all your cooldowns. You used everything that you got in your kit. You're 1 HP. I'm sitting here going, okay, well, I'm just going to die to tower, maybe the minions. Psych! Mid laner goes back in, gets another kill, and turns out that the support was the true mid laner all along because this guy's Sobek was a menace the entire time.
We're 0-2 right now, by the way.
I don't know if any team is going to allow Sobek back into Name and Progress's hands just because of the threat that it might go back to mid laner SC, who had a phenomenal game on the Sobek. And with that, Name and Progress keeps themselves alive in the lower bracket, mind you, but still being alive in the tournament and be able to keep things going. Now, Scrumptious versus Borscht. That was a nail-biter of a set. Back and forth. Game 1 went to Scrumptious off the back of Raw solo, Zeus mid. And we went into Game 2 saying, okay, you got to get rid of both of those. Like, you can't be giving both of those back over to Scrumptious. And Borscht didn't. They only gave one of them over. But now it turns out that one wasn't quite enough. And then we get to Game 3. And okay, surely they don't get him again.
Baskin's gonna blink.
Yeah, Haddock's out Raw solo again. And we'll just put it at this. This Raw solo build is just good. And it has just been owning everything. I mean, Haddox has no concern of anything. He's in the middle of 3 people just standing there swinging auto attacks at people. Felt essentially unkillable in both of the games that he had played. At this point, just doesn't care. I mean, Haddox hasn't moved. He's just standing in place the entire time. Firing off shot after shot, keeping himself alive. And Zapman nearly dies. Actually, his team throws Fido K right back to him, which I thought was a little funny. But at this point in the game, it really did just feel like the mental had been broken from Borscht. And I feel like in this matchup, given the circumstances of how it kind of played out, Game 1 was a really, kind of devastating match for Borscht. Borscht was able to kind of fight back a little bit in Game 2, and then the extended break between them in Game 3 made it a really tough time. And I feel like Borscht kind of got a little bit iced, and they kind of just played against their own mentals here, because once Scrumptious got ahead in game number 3, it was all downhill at that point. I mean, there was no stopping the Scrumptious train, and with that, Scrumptious gets to move on to the semifinals. So as we go into the future weeks, and by that I mean 2 days from now for the NA playoffs, number 2, I think a lot has to be paid attention to the draft of Scrumptious, because they're not always drafting what everybody else is. You're thinking solo, and okay, you're going to get maybe your Sobeks, your Chalks, your Bolognas. Not many people were playing the Raw solo except for Haddox. And I think Haddox has now shown the competitive world what this can do. I actually looked at the conversation between the two, and I just see Falcon going, that was nasty. Don't do that. Haddox did it to him twice, and it worked out really well. And the last one here, now this is an early round 1 matchup for Food Drive for Globe that I kind of want to touch base on a little bit, because this was a very clean game number 1 for Food Drive for Globe. And then they kind of, I don't want to say they kind of took it easy in game number 2, but they didn't play as dominant in game 2 against Roll the Dice. And for a little while, Roll the Dice was able to put up at least a decent fight against Food Drive for Globe. You can see we're 24 minutes in. It's game number 2. Food Drive are technically down in gold at this point. But it is just the veteranship that these players have, their ability to just kind of recuperate and say, all right, guys, no more messing around. We're done. Let's lock back in. And they're able to close out this set. They take a nice little 2-0. And we actually see Tegvir, and maybe this feels like it's weird to make a call out for, but we see what Tegvir is able to do on actual, like, range DPS carries, like your hunter style of god. For a lot of the Swiss bracket, the open bracket, Tegvir is playing like Susano ADC. Like Hunter what? Range damage who? I'm playing Susano. So getting to see what Tegvier can do on actual range DPS picks, and especially Kernanos, who is one of the top 2 hunters right now alongside with Jing Wei, I think this is a good showing of what Food Drive is capable of, moving forward and onward, because now they have to face the toughest opponent in all of the bracket, has been the toughest opponent no matter what, and it's Cowabunga, and that is not going to be an easy match for Food Drive. But we were saying the same thing for them when they had to fight Scrumptious very early on. I think it was open bracket they had to play against them. It was Swiss bracket these guys have had to play against some tough opponents. Food Drive has what it takes. They've just got to group together, and they've just got to play confidently, because when you look at the competitive history of them versus Cowabunga, it's nowhere close. It's a bunch of players who in Smite 1, they were SOC to maybe lower mid SCC at best for some of them, versus literal world champions on the opposite side of the plate for them. But now here in Smite 2, the playing ground is kind of evened out a little bit. So some of these really dominant Smite 1 teams aren't quite as dominant in Smite 2, maybe compared to some of their peers who were maybe in some of the lower brackets, some of the lower stages of competitive play in Smite 1. So I think that these 2 semifinals, and in particular this first one, which is Cowabunga versus Food Drive, is one that I'm going to be keeping maybe the most eyes on, just because there's a chance for a really big upset here. Putting Cowabunga in the losers bracket would be absolutely insane to see in the first, one of the first matchups of the day. If you're unfamiliar as to maybe who some of the players are that are still alongside in this tournament, we do have the rosters available to you. And as mentioned, that Cowabunga versus Food Drive for Globe. You look at Cowabunga's roster and you sit there and go, who in the world is ever going to take these guys down? Well, so far, it's only happened a single time in the entirety of Smite 2 competitive that we've been putting on. Between the Alpha Weekend tournaments, between our first closed Alpha tournament, open bracket, Swiss bracket, all of that, only one time has Cowabunga dropped a set. So now it's up to see if Food Drive for Globe can make that number 2. Other matches, T-Name with 5M, Scrumptious, Borscht versus Name in Progress. But there's actually a very interesting storyline with this very last matchup here of Kitty Party and Mr. Play-by-Play. So all 6 of these other teams, they're ones that have kind of, popped themselves up from the different stages of the Swiss bracket. You had Cowabunga and Team of 5Ms. They were technically round number 3 of Swiss bracket. They were in the first wave of qualification. After that, it was Scrumptious and Food Drive for Globe. They're in the next wave, technically week number 4 of Swiss. They qualify in. And then Borscht and Name in Progress were in the final round of qualifications. Kitty Party and Mr. Play-by-Play didn't make it through Swiss. Kitty Party wasn't even in the Swiss bracket.
Yeah.
They were the number 1 seed coming from open bracket. But not only that, both of these 2 teams were in the same group for Last Chance Qualifier. This was Group C's matchup. These 2 have already played each other once in that Last Chance Qualifier, that best of 3. It did go 2-0 to Kitty Party last time. But now Mr. Play-by-Play have a little bit more at stake, and now they got maybe a little bit more information on a team that prior they might not have had a lot of details on or a lot of intel with, because the open bracket was going on behind the scenes. Nobody was really, streaming their POVs. We weren't, covering the open bracket matchups like we were these top ends. So at that point, Kitty Party had the more intel than anybody else compared to, any of these teams out here. But now we're on a much more even playing ground, and now both of these 2 teams are playing in this lower bracket, and it's their last chance or their last lives really in the bracket to stay alive. So I think that when it comes to a storied matchup, this is the biggest one. You have the number 1 open bracket team who didn't even make it to the Swiss bracket. They jumped in, they said, okay, week 1 of the 5-week stretch, we're going to play open bracket, we're going to see how it goes. And you have a team that didn't qualify from Swiss, the ones that got dropped down into the last chance qualifier, in the same group with each other, both make it out of the qualifications in their group, and now one final time have to play against each other to see who gets to stay alive in playoffs. I think that this weekend has a lot of really fun storylines to follow through, and I think that everybody should 100% be tuning into all these matchups.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's going to be nothing but good sets this weekend, right? I mean, we got the best of the best, and somehow we have to narrow it down even further. Do you have, obviously Cowabunga comes out, but do you have teams that you're
my top 3?
Yeah, your top 3.
Top 3. I think Cowabunga is probably the quick, easy one to
even if they lose the one set, they're probably still going to make it some other way.
I think that even if Cowabunga do lose their semifinal matchup, they've still got I would call it a 95%er to make it in just because of depending on who gets knocked down along with them. Team name with 5Ms is my number 2, but if somehow these two got to now play each other in a lower bracket scenario, there might only be one of those ones coming in, which is then to go and say that team name with 5Ms is my number 2 pick, coming out of North America. I've got Cowabunga, team name with 5Ms, and from the lower bracket, out of all the teams that have to still make their run, which means it would be between Food Drive, Scrumptious, Borscht, Name in Progress, Kitty Party, Play-by-Play.
That's a lot of teams. That's a lot of good teams.
I'm probably giving it to Food Drive, honestly. It was a team that I think came into this event maybe a little bit underrated, but have really shown they've got what it takes. And I think that even if they don't win versus Cowabunga, they've beaten Scrumptious. They've beaten some of these other top teams. I think that they've got a really good shot of making it.
They were one of the teams, and I agree with you because I think they're in my top 3. And it's specifically because like they were one of the teams that when you look at them, or at least when I looked at them at first, I was like, this is going to be a good team, right? Like I was like, they're going to be a good team.
Oh yeah.
And when we get to this point where we're like saying, hey, we're going to narrow it down to 3, they're going to give some trouble to those top teams, but then we'll say goodbye. And then I watched them in Swiss, and I went, never mind. This is this is in fact one of our top 3 teams, and I will expect to be seeing them at LAN or something like that. It's just going to be fun to see, and there's always a chance for upsets, as we've already seen, especially in North America, where they've been happening a little bit more. But they've happened in EMEA as well. And it feels really weird because this is normally the part where I'm supposed to throw to Malum and learn about 3 other regions. But again, they finished their playoffs. We've got the winners. It's just the next 3 teams from these guys. And then we're at LAN. We're sitting over there. Well, actually, we're sitting over there. Spoiler alert. We're going to be doing something with the desk this weekend. So there's something to tune in for you. But then we're going to be in LAN, and the players are going to be over there. So maybe that's more important. And then on top of that, we're going to be going to Vegas, and I'm going to say 2 months, but realistically, it's like 2 events. It's like two esports weekends.
Yeah,
and that's crazy.
That is crazy. It sounds more like 1 month because we're already done with November pretty much. That's what I see. We're not, but like,
and like realistically, like holiday time is fake time.
That is
as we all have learned. Sometimes it goes by way faster than you expect. Sometimes it's way slower, but no matter what, it's all irrelevant and an illusion.
It feels really weird to say that there are only 3 weeks of competitive play left of the Founders.
Yeah, that makes me nervous.
Like we're getting down to the wire where it's one final week of playoffs, the week of the in studio LAN, and then it's Vegas where we're out there getting the thing done and concluding the Founders series and seeing who's the first SMITE 2 champion.
It is a lot of fun still to be had, despite the fact that it's so little left in comparison to what we've done and what's been completed. We are narrowing down the teams. We are getting into LAN's territory. We're talking about Vegas stuff, and all of that, of course, is kicking off tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern. What Shelly said at this point has probably been a couple more minutes, so like 7 hours 40 minutes ago or something like that.
Exactly, 7 hours 40 minutes ago.
And then add 24 hours to that, and that's when we're starting tomorrow. And then, North America starting at 11 a.m. Eastern. And I can keep that one Eastern because that one's like homegrown. Like we're North America. So you should know what that means if you're in NA. If you're not in NA, it's the same time we typically start. So make sure that you're tuning in wherever you happen to be watching all of our streams, because I know we're all over the place, but here where you're watching this, we'll definitely have it. But from myself, from Shelly, from JMac, everyone back in production, from Malum and all the other casters, everyone that's included in esports, and of course everyone here at High Res Studios, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow as we start to close off the playoffs.
Made in Georgia.